In this episode, we're going to explore the transformation of organizational learning solutions over time and recent developments that are transforming learning as we know it. Now, as I quickly share some housekeeping notes, drop in the comments or chats where you're joining in from today. We are recording today's session, so if you're interested in a replay, be on the lookout for an email later today. That email is going to include a survey for feedback, as well as a number of resources that are aligned to today's conversation. We suggest putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, quitting out of your email and messaging apps so you can really get the most out of today's discussion, and it's also going to help with your audio and video quality. And lastly, we love interaction, so feel free to share your thoughts and comments with us in the chat. Now, as I get this show underway, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. An Aussie-turned New Yorker who coined the term neuroleadership when he co-founded NLI over 2 decades ago. With a professional doctorate, 4 successful books under his name, and a multitude of bylines ranging from the Harvard Business Review to the New York Times and many more, a warm welcome to the co-founder and CEO of the Neuroleadership Institute, Dr. David Rock. Thanks for being here today, David.
Hey, Shelby, happy Friday. Good to see you.
Happy Friday. We're almost at the end of the week. And our moderator for today leads the research team at the Neuroleadership Institute, where she focuses on translating cognitive and social neuroscience into actionable solutions for organizations, as well as helps to communicate relevant research in an accessible manner for the public. Previously, she was a professor at Dominican College and New York University and a researcher at the Nathan Klein Institute. She holds a bachelor's degree from Brown University and a PhD in neuroscience from New York University. A warm welcome to the Senior Director of Research at NLI, Dr. Emma Saro. Thanks for being here today, Emma, and I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Shelby. Hi, David. How's it going?
Hey, Emma, good to be back.
Yeah, happy Friday. So today we have something exciting to talk about. We're discussing something we've really been working on, experimenting on for about 26 years now. It's a completely new kind of learning platform, one that really solves for something that's never fully been figured out and solved before. So it's a new idea, it's still in its early stages, but it's promised to only get better over time as we learn more. And we're planning to evolve all of our work onto this platform. So today we're talking about what we're calling the HAP, or the Habit Activation Platform. Now, we are the experts in habit activation, habit building, so we're going to dive into that research today. But since we've been talking a lot about leadership and leadership development and leadership skills, I want to dive into kind of where a lot of this idea came from and toss it over to you, David. How did this idea come to kind of like solve for the fix for leadership development?
Yeah, it's been a long journey. I mean, essentially, like leadership development, and by that I include like the senior executives, C-suite, the VPs, directors, but also all the way down to frontline managers. It's really anyone who manages people or is leading, like that whole category of people, or sort of a program, is really has a history of being incredibly inefficient. And I think you've got some statistics to share about that, but it's just been incredibly inefficient. And we've been innovating in that space literally for 26 years from many different angles. Like bringing in neuroscience actually makes it more efficient, because people can more easily activate these kind of subtle, seemingly soft concepts and actually make them more concrete to understand them. So that really helps, right? Bringing in neuroscience. But also the way that you actually teach this, is really important. So we've been innovating this space a long time, and we've kind of had a couple of big breakthroughs over the 26 years. One was about 10 years ago, where we kind of deconstructed everything and put things into these 30-day sprints. But now we've probably got the biggest breakthrough we've ever had in 26 years, and we've had a few people who are kind of long-term partners with us saying they think it's the best work we've done so far. So we're excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, it is exciting, and it's a huge challenge. So as David said, there are many really impactful statistics that kind of demonstrate how challenging leadership development is. But some of them, just a few of them, 23% of leaders rate their development, the way they're developing their leaders, as high quality, only 23%. And 77% of businesses report that they're struggling to find and truly develop leaders. And yet,
right, that's crazy. Just think of that for a minute. A quarter of people say it's any good.
Yeah.
Like if there was any other service like that, it would be just disrupted so fast, and yet it's been really slow to be disrupted, which is so interesting. And yeah, those are scary statistics. A quarter of people think it's good, and 77% of companies say they really struggle with it. Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't mean that they're not trying, right? So it's almost $78 billion is the industry. So working in different kinds of platforms, in-person retreats, different kinds of learnings, it's still not working.
Interesting. Yeah. So folks out there, how would you rate, if you're in an organization, how would you rate the quality of your leadership development strategy? So, and by that, we've got to generalize it. It's just one question. So we could break it down many ways, but just one question, sort of the quality being like the effectiveness as well as the efficiency. Give us a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Where would you put the quality of your leadership development program? So, first-time managers all the way to senior. Where would you put? Let's get a number. Thanks, Judy, for being first. We won't quote you or hold you to this. We've got some 4s, some 6s, some 7s. A scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is obviously the best. Not obvious. It's good to define it, but scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your leadership development? We've got all sorts of numbers coming in. Let's get some more numbers in there. Got some 4s. We've got an 8. That's interesting. And some 3s, some 4s, probably averaging around 4 or 5 in there, maybe 5, kind of overall. Yeah. So definitely some gaps.
Yeah, a lot of work to do. Absolutely. And Rex, it seems like Rex is already signed up for April 18th cohort.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah. I think there's 3 sort of trends that are happening right now. That sort of overall, there's sort of the first one is there's just more to learn than ever before. So if you're a leader, you actually have more to learn to be a good leader now than ever. So it's all the usual skills of like the hard skills of running a P&L or managing a team or scheduling. So those hard sort of technical skills. Then there's the soft skills, the people skills. Now it's like, how do you like support people who are having really difficult time? How do you bring people together who are divided? How do you think about AI? So there's just like the amount that you've got to understand and learn as a leader or manager today is really, really expanded. At the same time, there's less time to do that. So there's more, people are busier overall with work. It's like the amount of work has expanded. And then the half-life of skills is dropping really fast as well. So, maybe 10 years ago, you'd learn a skill and you'd be like, okay, this is like a 5-year skill, 10-year skill. Now you're learning a skill and it's a 1-year or 2-year skill, and you're going to have to learn a new one. So the half-life of skills are speeding up while we have less time and more to learn. It's a bit of as they say, a perfect storm where we need like a really, really different approach. So it's, interesting. What are your thoughts, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, we've actually done some work in this, asking leaders, hundreds of talent executives, about the skills they think are available, are needed, are had by leaders, and what they don't yet have. And actually, this kind of demonstrates the dynamics of the skills, and that we are needing to learn skills faster, more regularly, and amp up the skills we already have. So 50% of skills leaders need today are skills they don't yet have. So we still need to learn more. And the ones they already have are actually now required at higher levels. So like what's needed now is maybe even amped up. So they need to be continually embedding this learning over time, and continuing amping up the learning of the skills they already have.
Right. So there's old skills like, just, being a really good communicator, if that was important before, in a world where people are kind of higher level of baseline stress and hybrid, more of a hybrid situation and more uncertainty in the world. Now you've got to be an even better communicator. Those old skills are even more important, but then you've got all these new skills as well. So yeah, we see it's around 50-50. Interesting. So we've been thinking about, like, as you sort of pull up to the whole space of developing managers and leaders, as we sort of look at all the different solutions and approaches to this, we've been having some insights about this, that there's sort of 3 main things that you need to solve for, and different modalities solve for different ones. Like the first thing to solve for is about building really strong social networks or relationships between people. So you really want folks to go into a leadership experience and come out with this like network of colleagues that they go to, we know there's research on there's really good research on people staying in a company because of that rich social network. There's also the sort of network analysis side of things, like the way Rob Cross studies organizational network analysis. You want really strong connections between leaders across functions, right? And that comes from spending time together, having shared experiences, sharing some difficult moments, but also having common language. And really sort of sharing the same language of things. So that's one thing. So we'll just call that relationships, right? So when you're doing leadership development, you want to solve for good quality relationships. We think that's 1/3 of the challenge. The other third of the challenge is actually building long-term habits in the participants, right? And we've come back and measured programs that people universally said were amazing and everyone should do it. And 2 months later, we'd say, what do you remember from the program, and what are you applying regularly as a habit? And found like you could have incredible support for a program, and you can have 50 people say everyone should do this, let's scale this. 2 months later, out of 50 people, 6 people can remember anything, and no one had a habit that they'd built that was still a habit that we're doing regularly. So there's this really big discrepancy between, oh, I love this program, it was great, everyone should do it, and it's actually really changed how I work. Right. And that's the business we're in. It's really changed how I work. We're in the habit activation business, and we're studying. So the first question is relationships. The second question is habits, right? Does this experience build long-term habits? The third one is sort of a combination of things, but it's does this scale and can it be personalized? Now, there's somewhat connected because it largely means going digital. But can you scale this? Right, and can people personalize it as well? That may be slightly different, but similar things. And the reason that's important is amazing if you can get 20 people into an experience that delivers the first two things. But if you can't actually impact all your people managers, you're not really impacting the organization. Things don't trickle down as much as we might think. So it's so anyway, we just call that scale, right? So you got relationships, habits, and scale. So different kind of modalities out there solve for different ones of these, right? So we think about workshops in person, kind of where the industry started, right? Great for relationships, probably the best of everything you could do for relationships, right? Actually terrible for habits long-term because it's a one-off event, and we need that spacing and we need that social pressure over time. And also terrible for scale, right? So really, really strong, like A+ for relationships, but like on habits like a C-, and on a scale like an F. So just terrible, right? And then along came like e-learning. The first sort of versions of e-learning were essentially kind of a classroom on a floppy disk or a flash drive or something, like an experience. It wasn't connected to the internet, but you were doing something digitally. And what did this do? It actually was terrible now for relationships. So now you got an F on relationships, right? But in terms of these other factors, get a little bit more long-term habits. So you did slightly better, but really still pretty bad. So now it's a B-. But you got the scale, right? So now you got an A+ on the scale. So they're solving for different things. Now, what then happened was we went to the LMS, right? So now the internet comes along, 2000 to 2010. Now we have the LMS, the learning management systems, still terrible at relationships, slightly better at long-term habits, even better at scaling and personalizing, right? But still really poor on the relationships and pretty poor on the habits. Then you've got like the LXP, the learning experience platform. So what's that doing? Actually still not much better on relationships. What's that solving for? It's actually solving for more personalized, scaling better, right? Not really doing much better at long-term habits, maybe a slight improvement on long-term habits, nothing with relationships. So we've essentially been saying, so one more thing, coaching, right? So if you make coaching digital, so, coaching that's not digital really, really doesn't scale, but doesn't solve relationships, but it does solve the habit problem, right? So if you make coaching digital, now you can somewhat solve the scale problem. It's still pretty expensive, but you can somewhat solve the scale problem and you solve the habit problem, but you don't solve the relationships problem. You've got all these people in individual coaching. And there's some research suggesting external coaches actually increase the chance of losing people. internal coaches actually increase retention and engagement and all sorts of good things. And we've studied that. So actually better to create, internal coaches and do it analog, we believe, with a limited audience, and not try to sort of impact the whole company with digital coaching. So we've been saying, look, how do you solve for all three? How do you, is there a way? And we go on these crazy like projects all the time. We do some things that we have no idea if they'll work, and quite often they don't, to be honest. You see the successes, but we do a lot of experiments, and experiments are bound to fail. So we've been doing this experiment for about a year to a year and a half now. Can we do something that actually builds really good relationships, like sufficiently? Like maybe it's not an A+, like in person, like spending 2 days together. Maybe it's not, but maybe we can get to a B+, right, on relationships. Maybe we can get it enough that it's actually really, really good, because maybe we can also get the habits working, right? Maybe we can get the habits up to like an A-, right? And maybe we can get the scale up to an A+, right? And so they don't all have to be, absolutely high, but can we get all of them high enough that it's a really, really different idea? And I can tell you finally, after about a year and a half, that we think we can. And we've called it a habit activation platform, or HAP for short. And apologies to those who watch the OA. It's a little triggering, that word. Everyone else is saying, what are you even talking about? And people who watch the OA are saying, yes, what an incredible show, but I still haven't understood it. Anyway, an aside, he's a character, HAP's a character in that show. So anyway, Emma, any thoughts? That's sort of the big picture. We think we think there's something here.
Thanks, Rex. I love that, Ron Burgundy. And anyone who's watched the show, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I haven't. So I have never brought
that's
into
rabbit
the
hole
conversation.
That's a rabbit hole. That's probably that movie is actually about rabbit holes. So it's a rabbit hole of rabbit holes. Anyway,
yeah. But that's interesting, because we did actually put a lot of rabbit holes in our latest program, Lead, which is great for diving into the science. But the one thing that's coming up for me is when you talked about habits, and I think it's sometimes we lose how difficult habits are to build. It's one thing to learn something. So you go to those retreats and you watch a video and you'll learn things, but it's really about practicing that behavior over time in the right environment. So in the social environment, in like the motivational drive that you get from some of these experiences. So that's why a lot of those earlier kind of pieces of this evolution didn't truly build habits. So this is something that we know really well. We also understand how difficult it is, and kind of like the right pieces you need to build habits. So that's the one thing that's kind of coming up for me, that, was difficult for all of those other like earlier forms to maybe get right, unless you're kind of practicing those behaviors over time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really difficult challenge. How do you create real relationships, but actually build long-term habits and actually be able to scale this? It's been such a fascinating challenge, but we think we can do. I think the relationship side, one of the ways to solve for that is have a cohort and kind of cohort size and cohort relevance, right? And make sure there's sufficient interaction with people. Now, we think we can do that largely completely asynchronously. That again is kind of sufficient that it's got real relationships built in there. Now, you might add some in-person experience once or twice or 3 times to a journey. Or you might add a real-time virtual experience, like on camera, again, once, twice, 3 times to an experience. But even without those, we think we can make something sufficiently social that it really does build relationships between people, and that the technology is kind of there for that. The scaling side of it, obviously, is about, using technology really cleverly, but in a way, anyone can build technology. The hard thing is building technology people use every day, like the toothbrush. But, building something people actually get in and use is really difficult. So the scale isn't just about, well, it's all there. The scale is, it's all there and everyone's using it all the time. And to do that, you have to build something compelling, right? But we've been thinking about all the ways to do that. But the really hard one is building so that people actually build habits like they do in coaching, right? And doing that in an asynchronous environment. It's been such an interesting challenge. And a lot of us, as we started thinking about this, were like, wow, is that even possible? Is that even, we had a little bit of a fixed mindset, like, how do we do it? But I remember having an insight about this early on, like let's say you're teaching SCARF. Many of you know SCARF, right? Status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. You go in and teach SCARF in a classroom or in a webinar, for example, and you kind of you present a bunch of stuff, you maybe give people an exercise, they have some insights. It's interesting, but there's this thing that with technology, there's a non-obvious upside to technology that we didn't see until we started using it, which is that you can break things down into little bites and have people digest them really kind of one chunk at a time, much more deliberately. And I'll give you an example of that. Like with Scarf, it actually builds on, firstly, this idea that that we react to everything in an approach or avoidance way, right? Toward or away, more or less. Like that concept itself, like in a classroom, we'll present that, but we don't have time to then digest and apply it. In a virtual environment, you can present that and then have people really like just dig into that. Then there's the fact that bad is stronger than good. And there's all these little stories about how that works and why our brain is this way and all the implications just of that, right? So you've got toward and away, you've got bad is stronger than good. Then you've got, social is stronger than anything else, and kind of understanding the way the social brain works. And then you've got, all the 5 elements and learning those one at a time. So what we found in a digital environment is you can take these nuggets and introduce them one at a time and have people digest them one at a time and think about the implications and apply them, maybe sit on them for a while. Maybe some people want to think about that for a few days and then come back. And so it can be much more personalized, and you can give people these little insights all the way along in a more powerful way. And so we hadn't noticed that even though you lose some things in digital, you actually gain some other things. But you have to focus on generating insight. So let's take this this idea of, say, bad is stronger than good, right? So like you can't just tell people, oh, hey, bad is stronger than good. You actually need people to have this experience of insight, where they have this aha moment, and we have a measure for the strength of that called the Eureka scale. We want a level 4 insight ideally. And so there becomes this really interesting challenge. How do you deliver content asynchronously that has people kind of have this big aha moment, and do that maybe without video? So we had another challenge, like we could use video, but our partners are very global, very, very global. People speaking all these different languages. If you don't use video, you can actually simultaneously translate so people receive everything in their own language, not just the stories and scenarios, but you can have a French person talking to an Italian person, and they're both speaking their native language, but reading in their native language. And it's fascinating that the technology can do that now. So that was another challenge. Now we're going to do it without video. We're going to do it relatively flat. And so it makes you really strip everything back and say, what creates an insight about, say, bad is stronger than good, right? And it turns out there's like just the right way of telling the story, just the right kind of little examples, and then just the right amount of science. And it's a real art. Now it becomes kind of an art and a science to kind of getting that across. But that's what we've been working on, and we continue to hone and hone and hone, is how do we get across this one little piece of, this one little idea such that it creates the strongest insight for people. That's kind of the goal. Anything you want to add to that, Emma? Just I know you're in the thick of that. So what's your experience kind of building that?
I mean, you've been speaking to a lot of the things, and a lot is coming up for me. But one of the things is just the challenge that all of the challenges that we were facing, and what doors open up by being able to kind of control a bit of the environment in the digital space, but also allowing for so much autonomy for the individual. So we were talking a bit about Scarf. And we also know that individuals love autonomy, being able to choose when they go on and when they learn, and how they learn and how they kind of move through. At the same time, we're giving them just like bite-sized pieces of information. So we're able to kind of control the information that they're exposed to, but they also have the autonomy to asynchronously learn, asynchronously communicate and socialize, which we all know from social media that like one of the reasons why it's so powerful, the relationships you can form on social media are kind of similar to the ones that we're kind of like engaging in these platforms. It's one of the reasons why it works so well. And so you can form these relationships and learn from each other asynchronously at your own pace. And also the information is always there. You're not losing it. Like in a retreat where you have information in a room and then you lose it, it's accessible to everyone, wherever, global. I think all of those things, all those boxes we were checking, and that autonomy piece is what also makes it a bit compelling. So you want them to come back the next day and continue trying. So all of those pieces together, I think kind of benefited us in terms of like checking all those boxes.
Yeah, let's dig into that a bit. So I think the first challenge we had to solve for is can we actually create strong enough insights in an asynchronous non-video environment? And honestly, we had no idea if that was possible. We went into this as an experiment, and if I was to bet, I would have said 50-50. We can, 50-50, we can't. We've worked out we can, but we didn't know, and it really challenged us to strip back to independent of any form of delivery, just like the central ideas and how to deliver those central ideas. So so solving for insights a really, really interesting puzzle. And then of course it becomes, how do you stack those insights and how do you sort of weave those together in different ways? And we're seeing this, the HAP, right? The habit activation platform is something we're going to put all our solutions on. We've launched the first one. We'll talk more about that a bit later, but we're going to put all our solutions on this because we think it's such a powerful mode. We'll still make our work available in other ways. If you really want to do workshops or you want to do hives, you want to do distributed learning solutions and just very asynchronous. But I think the HAP is the future of where we're going. But the solving for insight is really important. But the second thing you've got to solve for is actually making sure it's social. And the question is sort of how much social is enough. Let me give an example. There's a really, really big difference between like going in and doing some learning about, say, bad is stronger than good, and there's no one involved. You're on your own. You just sort of you're just being told you have to do it, or you've decided to do it, but you're going in and learning. It's a very big difference in the attention you pay between that and knowing that your boss and your peers are learning the same thing, and that you're going to be seeing their comments shortly. Right. And they're going to be seeing your comments shortly about this. You're going to have to make some comments about your own reflections on this content. Right. And you're like, okay, we call this positive social pressure, right? Like the attention density you pay because, you're engaged in this experience with people who matter to you, right? The attention density goes way up. Attention density is the quality and quantity of attention that you pay, like the amount of focus, right? So a lot of digital is just not very social. So the question is sort of how much social is enough, and sort of how do you make it really, really motivating. So to Michelle's point, and yeah, folks, put any comments in the chat, always interested. So like a lot of people have sort of been like over technology, and I know through the pandemic we got sort of overwhelmed with screens, and there's this push to kind of get back into the classroom and do this. I think there's a great opportunity if you have a management audience that can get to an office. I think you can do a wonderful hybrid experience these days where you've got a little bit in person, like 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then a whole bunch that's using technology, and then come back together, a little bit in person. Because in person, you completely lose the ability to learn stuff after about an hour or two. It's so you can do this really nice hybrid thing if you have that ability. Otherwise, it's like, how do we make it really engaging and easy? And it's, for us, we're looking at like, something that's on your phone or your laptop or your tablet, whatever, but something that's on your phone that you can drop into really easily. Just do another minute or two, check in with your colleagues, see what they're doing, how they've been going. And then also use this, use this platform anytime you kind of stuck, anytime you're sort of challenged by something, wondering about something, not sure about something, and we'll come back to that. So how do you get people really, really engaged, even though it's technology? That's the other challenge. But to summarize, like we want strong insights. We want these to be social because the social provides the motivation. And then we want to do this slowly over time. And we're thinking sort of the longest timeline is 6 months, which is the lead program, 15 minutes a week for 6 months. The shortest time will be 30 days. So we'll have quite a few experiences that'll be 30 days. We'll have some experiences that'll be 90 days. But the minimum unit of learning will be 30 days. So you're wanting to learn something, sort of one set of skills, how to be a better ally, or how to be more inclusive, or how to reduce bias. We'll do that in 30 days, right? You want to be a better inclusive leader overall. You might want bias and inclusion and allyship. So we might do that in 3 months. if you're looking at overall your leadership skills, it might be 6 months, but over time is going to be really, really important. So yeah, let's pause there, take some questions and comments, and anything you wanted to add sort of up to there.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Michelle's been putting some really great comments, and I just wanted to speak to one of them on the problem of technology being not motivating for some individuals. And I think that's absolutely right. But what about, like, what if you put the right things in that technology? So what the content that we put in, the way we put it in, is we're tapping into all of the things that make something compelling. So we encourage individuals to think and reflect on their own actions and how they've experienced these things, talk about them. That metacognition is really important. And then also to react and respond to individuals. So that social piece becomes compelling. We ask you to kind of like to go through a story, which allows you to kind of like put yourself in that character situation, think about when that happened and the underlying science why. So we kind of put in all of those components that make it compelling. Like, why is this important for me? And that's different than just opening up just like a learning platform on your phone or on your computer. I think that the content that you put into that technology can make it compelling if it's designed well.
Yeah,
That's
that was
coming up for me.
Yeah, that's a good comment. So Danny was asking a question about, does this go deeper than the AGES model? For those of you who don't know AGES is the 4 like conditions that all have to be high. They all have to be like A- at the least, for learning to really stick. Like, and what I mean by really stick is to get relatively easy recall under pressure. That's really our definition of learning that's stuck, right? It's easy recall under pressure. Means you can just like effortlessly remember something, right? If it's really hard to remember something, in general, like you'll never use it when things really, really matter. So AGES, attention, generation, emotion, spacing. You need very high focus, very high intensity of attention for learning to stick. You need generation, which is connections to existing knowledge. You need emotions to be pretty high, either positive or negative. And you need spacing to be pretty high. You need all 4. And what we find is that, and we've written widely on this, we can put this in the chat. This is actually, we published in 2010, 14 years ago. It stood the test of time as the necessary conditions for embedding learning. What we find is insight learning actually focuses attention. Like when you have an insight, you're paying a lot of attention to the insight. It's the highest form of generation. It releases emotions. And with insights, you get the aftershock effect. So you actually get a spacing effect, weirdly, with as well. So when you create this like big aha, you're actually maximizing AGES around something. So that's one thing. Social learning, like going back to the example of, learning something, knowing your boss will look at your comments. Your attention's way up, your generation's way up, your emotions way up. And every time you see your boss, this idea will reactivate. So you're getting spacing. So insight like helps AGES, it helps really maximize AGES. Social really helps maximize AGES. And then learning over time obviously maximizes the spacing in AGES, and to some degree, some of the other elements, generation in particular. So it's sort of like a way of operationalizing AGES. We see kind of insight learning as critical. And the other thing is that we've seen that the strength of insight correlates to how likely people will take actions. We actually did a study, about 500 people on that. And it's just so clear to us that sort of, when people go, oh, that's interesting, nothing really changes. But when people go, wow, like something changes. It's so intuitive, it's so clear. So we're always like, how do we create a really strong aha moment, in a way that moves people? And so I think if you don't put insight as sort of the first thing to solve for, it just doesn't get done. Now you're delivering content, or you're managing a process, or you're doing something, but you've got to sort of make insight the centerpiece. It's a bit like, a comedian in a way, a stand-up comedian, like it's the quality of the laughs, right? You got a room of 1,000 people. The success of a comedian is how many of those 1,000 people laugh and how loudly, which has some correlates. Interesting. It's actually, it relates to how things are connected and novelty, like things really novel, really surprising, right? It's in the delivery. There's some skills that actually cross over. The way you sort of link everything together as you go into the, through the comedy show, things, link and link and link. We use similar principles. So it's not just about the content, it's about the delivery, it's about the linkages. And what you're trying to get, if you've got 1,000 people learning something, you're trying to get 1,000 people going, wow, didn't see that coming. That's really not painful, powerful or painful. That's really powerful. I'm going to do something about this. Oh, next screen. Oh, here are 3 things that people seem to do that seem to work really well. Feel free to pick one or create your own. Oh, I'm going to do that one. Oh, I'm now going to tell, my 30-person cohort that I'm going to do that one. So now I really do it, right? So now you're going from insight to action to habit, right? Through this platform. So that's what we've been thinking about. So the pull through from creating an insight to getting people to set an action with these if-then plans, and then making sure that happens because people are kind of coming in every week and sharing what they're working on. So that's the basic design of the experience.
Right, which is what sets up the social accountability too. So even though it's asynchronous, you're coming back and you're reporting, you're talking to your cohort, you have these like live sessions after every kind of big chunk and you talk about what you've learned and what you've experienced. But I will say just a bit about the Eureka moment of insight is we've done a lot of work on the insight moment. And that is something that we bring up every single time we design one of these. And you ask us every single time as we're talking, what's the insight here? Because we have to have an insight before we bring learners through any other material. What's the major insight? Because otherwise they're not going to be compelled to learn the strategies and build the habit. It's the motivation that comes from it, the emotion that you feel when you're having an insight. All of those things are so powerful. And we've done a ton of work, and it's a real phenomenon.
Yeah, maybe the team can put some of the links to insight we've done. We've written papers on it. We've actually written 3 different research papers on insight over the years. But I think about this like sometimes when I'll sit down with the CEO and the CHRO will say, I need you to talk my CEO into being willing to do some work on addressing bias, right? I need you to convince him that we work on bias, and you've got 5 minutes to talk to him. I'm like, okay, great, love a challenge. And I'll sit down or get on the phone with someone and I'll say, look, have you ever made a decision, a business decision, like to buy a company or to hire a person or invest in something? Have you ever made a business decision you were really, really confident in at the time? You were really sure it was the right decision, like in your bones. And then like 6 months later, you look back and you go, what was I thinking? Right? And you realize how wrong you were, right? And every time I've asked that question, people have been like, yeah, you're right. I've been like, okay, so that's your brain playing tricks on you. Would you like to know how your brain does that so that you can catch some of those in yourself, but also in your team, so that we have fewer of those? They're like, hell yeah, let's do that. Like that's it. I've done 3 minutes, So that's an example of creating an insight. That's a really powerful insight that like moves people. And honestly, there's science to that, but a lot of it is evolutionary. Like, as in we're trying thousands of different versions of stories and things over the years, and then we work out which ones really, really work. So, it's some of the little narratives we use have like evolved over literally 26 years. So anyway, going back to these 3 things, if you can create insight and do it socially and do it over time and keep people engaged, we believe you can achieve those 3 things. You can build relationships, you can build real habits, and you can scale. And that's basically what we're doing. But along the way, something kind of weird happened. And this happens a lot with us. I'll go off and go hiking or snowboarding or do something, or I'll switch my brain off for a while. And my unconscious brain will work on something, and I'll have this big level 4 insight. And I'll be madly texting the team when they're trying to have a weekend. I'm sorry. And I'll be like, oh my God, there's something really important we've got to try. And usually the first response from the team is like, maybe, that sounds really hard. We don't really have the skill set for that. We've never done that before. And all this. Emma, you're really good. You're like, it's not, it happens, right? Because everyone's so busy. I mean, the main answer is, oh my God, we're so busy. Can we even think about that? That's actually the main answer, right? And so we just sort of gently kind of explore an idea, and because at least 50% of my ideas are terrible, and they end up going nowhere. But this is one idea was like, look, one way to keep people really engaged in this experience was like, what if they could like jump around anywhere, right? Even though we want them to kind of go over time, what if they could come in and jump around anywhere? And at first we had this really big internal debate, like that would mess everything up. But there are people who basically buy a book and open it anywhere and start reading, and then open somewhere. Like there are people who buy a book and read from the start to the end, but there's a lot of people who buy a book and don't read it like in a linear way. They like look online for where the good parts are and jump to that, and they skip around, right? They're high autonomy people. So I was like, what about the high autonomy people who are often strong leaders? How do we build this for them? Can we just let them jump around? I started to think about this, and what I was really trying to do is, how do you get people fastest from having a problem to having a solution, right? And just like a phone does, right? I need a room tonight in this city I'm suddenly traveling to. I'm going to use whichever app has the fewest buttons to press, the fewest decisions to make, right? So I'm going to use one I've already used, has my credit card already, that knows me, knows I like this kind of hotel, right? So I want to solve a problem, a car, a hotel room, a dinner, whatever it is. I want to solve that with as little decision making as possible. So I was like, what could we do that for leadership development? Like, I'm having a conflict with this employee. I want to solve that as efficiently as possible, right? And I'm like, how do you do that? And then I had this insight. It's not so much about letting people dip into the program as, could we let people ask a question and maybe have AI answer it for them? And I was like, that seems crazy. There's no way, like that would take years and cost millions. That was my first thought. But like, could we build an AI bot that actually kind of answered people's questions? And we really didn't know. We went in and experimented, and we started last year, obviously, and we started playing with it. And to our amazement, the technology has kind of become simple enough and kind of scalable enough that you can do it. And so we've been working. Some of you have seen this. We're going to be making it live shortly. But we've been working. We built this character. We realized it's not so much artificial intelligence as neurointelligence, because it's a bit like if you go to a law firm and they have an AI, it's powered up with all the law documents, and they try to keep out things that are noisy, right? So we thought, what if we powered up an AI with all the stuff about the brain and all the stuff about how to interact better with humans, and all our conversation guides, right? And all our tools and all our language, and like with growth mindset, right? And making sure everything has a growth mindset, and making sure everything's managing for accountability, and making sure everything is creating psychological safety, right? So what if we powered up an AI that had, growth mindset, safety, accountability, and every bit of research about capacity, motivation, bias, everything, and just see what happens. And so we did that. And neurointelligence, I was like, neurointelligent what? Neurointelligence. And at first I thought neurointelligent assistant, NIA, and then it was like neurointelligent leadership enhancing system, and Niles was born. So we've been playing with Niles, and we've actually made a decision that we're going to make Niles free to a lot of people very shortly. Not in minutes or hours, but it's coming soon, like in a matter of days or weeks. And we're going to make Niles free. And Niles, I've been playing with Niles, asking it the most amazing questions. I think one of my favorite last week was, why do we struggle with vulnerability? And it walked through an incredibly amazing brain-based answer of why we do this. And then I said, what can we do if we want to, if we want to deal with this less and be more confident? What can we do? And it gave me this incredible set of steps. And I said, well, what if I wanted to do one thing right now? What would I do? And it literally described that. It's really quite remarkable. Or like, I'm having trouble. I accidentally upset someone in my team because, they came to me and asked me about something and I didn't interact well. Can you write me an email to resolve this conflict? And it will do that. So the vision is like, you're not sure about something, feeling slightly uncertain about something. Hey, Niles, can you give me this answer? So anyway, before we get carried away, I'm going to put something in the chat. AskNiles.ai. If you just don't put www or anything else, just askniles.ai. If you click on that, just grab it now and do it after the show, or do it now, whatever you like. You can put your information there, and you'll be invited, as people who follow our work, you'll be invited to be in the first group to use this. As I said, we're going to make this free for a while for people to try, probably like for a month or a week or something like that. So askniles.ai. Just put that in, not in the chat here, put it in your browser. And you'll actually get a website pop up. Sorry, I was very unclear. Put it in your browser, not in the chat. and or save it and put it in your browser afterwards. Just fill in your details and you're going to get access as people who follow our work. So there's a couple of things we're doing. We've also realized, and all of this came out of just like, how do we keep people engaged in a HAP? It was like, well, you need an AI that you can use that has all the content of that HAP, right? And so then we're like, okay, maybe we're going to put every bit of content, into that. So anyone using these platforms. And now suddenly all these organizations are saying, actually, we would like Niles without the leadership program behind it. Can we just have Niles? And so we've now said, actually, conceptually, we could plug in, like Kath, nice to see you here from Aerospace. We could plug in all your HR policies, HR tools, how you're supposed to hire and promote and all this stuff. So we can plug in all the what into Niles, and then actually include all the how, like this is the way to interact, this is the way to do that. So we could plug in both the what and the how and have something really, really powerful that every employee could use. So we've been evolving and adapting really fast. But if you're from a company, just put your company name and Niles. If you're from a company, you want to kind of have some exploratory conversations where we're having those exploratory conversations now to set things up. But just put your company name. We'll have your contact from our database, but your company name and the word Niles, and we will follow up with you. If you're an individual wanting to explore Niles, just go to askniles.ai, and you will be able to register to get there. But to Karen's point, yeah, some companies are not allowing this. So this would be at a corporate level. We would do a deal with your company where it was allowed, it was inside the firewall. It would also probably be, hosted like in your system. So we'd work out a way that that it's seen as a safe thing. Just like a law firm has an AI for their lawyers to use, we're going to be developing a much safer in-house AI. So it's been a crazy evolution from so no HTTPS, no even www, just askniles.ai. That's what you'll get there. So the other thing to say is just in the last 10 minutes or so, where we are right now is we've launched our first 6-month experience, our first 6-month HAP called LEAD. And LEAD is the 9 essential habits founded on growth mindset, psych safety, and accountability for all levels of manager. Niles is blocked for you. That's really sad. Okay. We'll follow up with you and find another way. Just put Niles in the chat, and we'll make sure we give you access. You'll be able to use that in a personal computer and personal email, stuff like that. So just put Niles if you're interested. If you can't get into askniles.ai, just put Niles in the chat, and we'll get someone to reach out to you. We're all learning and growing every day. So anyway, back to LEAD. So LEAD, we're actually about to launch our second cohort. Shortly, it'll be something you can register anytime, but we're still kind of starting a cohort at the same time. So my team can put that in the chat. We have done open enrollment for the first time in our history of our core programs. So LEAD, you can register as an individual or bring into your company. So if you're interested in LEAD, Evan's just put a link there. But you can register personally for that, or also we're happy to have a chat with you about doing a cohort for your organization. So, but everyone's interested in Niles, of course, now. So do you have a question you'd like to ask Niles? We can have some fun with it. I'll see if we can ask Niles a question.
Rex.
Cool. There we go. Let's ask. Thanks, Rex. I'm going to ask Niles, why do people get distracted so easily? There we go. Why do people get so easily distracted? I know we're jumping around a little bit today, but
and we've been doing a little bit of testing too on Niles and the way that it answers as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, if you're from an organization and you want to explore LEAD in-house, like LEAD, we're doing a product demo every week or two. We'll make sure we get you to that. But if you're interested in talking to us about LEAD, just put your company name and the word LEAD. And we've started rolling out our first cohort. It's getting amazing feedback. We've got one in APAC and one in North America starting. So if you're interested in LEAD in-house in your company, put your company name and the word LEAD, and we'll follow up with you. So the next one we'll do is unconscious bias. So the Decide program will be in a HAP shortly. That'll be the next one. And then we'll probably do Include and Connect and kind of all the things. And the other thing that we'll do is actually make all those available B2C as well, kind of open that up, which is going to be really interesting to see what happens. So Emma, what else did you want to share with the folks? I've done a record-breaking number of links that we've shared, but what's on your mind about the HAP?
Well, just that, and I think we're going to continue talking about habit building and habit science. And I think, we covered a lot about the important things of like, what are the important factors of habit formation and how to really build habits. It is incredibly difficult, but we really pulled out the most important factors. So we talked a bit about lead and not so much about the details of the experience, but the storytelling, the metacognition, the reflection, the interaction with the character, all of those things. And also on top of that, we talked a bit about the autonomy that you get by being able to move around. We also added that within a learning where you can jump into these rabbit holes and dive into the science if you want just a little bite, or you want to spend a whole hour reading up on like all of the science. We put pretty much everything into it. So it's for any level of interest that you have.
Right, those rabbit holes mentioned. So you can be reading about, having, like bad is stronger than good. You can be reading about that and you go, oh, I want to know more. And you can go open up a research digest, it's called, and click in. And in that digest, you'll have original papers and more information, and it'll connect to the other digest. So we've built this ecosystem kind of underneath it all of all the research. So we've been building this kind of this whole different language for leadership for a long time. And we really had no idea what we would do with it, but it's been really cool. Let me show you something really cool. I asked Niles, okay, I asked Niles, why do people get so easily distracted? Thanks, Rex, for that. So neurological, physiological, environmental factors. So partially is the brain's tendency for novelty. Right, you can see about that. Partially it's just limited cognitive resources. Right, so one of the versions coming up, you better click on, prefrontal cortex, click on multitasking, click on these things and get more. External environmental factors, right? And then I asked that, what can we do to be less distracted? So manage your environment, leverage cognitive strategies, use technology. What is the one best thing I could do? I could start today, and we'll see what it says. So, you can really like, it's got the brain science in here. So it's a really, really a cool thing. So as I said, get in there and there we go. Why do people procrastinate when they know it causes stress? Okay, we'll ask one more question.
Yes.
before we wrap up. It's a good question.
It's a good question. I was about to answer, but I don't want to be incorrect and have Niles contradict me. So I'll wait.
Okay, so it's giving you 3 options to choose from around the previous question. So
nice. And that's what Niles does, is he usually provides like some very specific set of actionable advice. It doesn't overwhelm.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, immediate versus future rewards, temporal discounting, avoidance of discomfort. That's a big one. Impaired self-regulation. All right, there you go. So just blowing our minds and brains, this idea. So let me wrap up with a few closing thoughts with where we opened. We opened with learning's been evolving, and it's been evolving as technology evolves, as the generations want different things, and just as people experiment in different ways. We've gone from workshops to digital learning, to LMS, to LXP, digital coaching. We think the HAP has the best of those. The HAP can build relationships, enough that it really sticks. It can build habits, powerfully, and it can also really, really scale. So the LEAD program, for example, if you're a company of 10,000 employees, 1,000 managers, you could have all 1,000 managers in a 6-month period powerfully transformed, and then have access to Niles that whole time and thereafter. So they're just much more effective as leaders. And in time, Niles will provide what we're calling neuro-intelligent nudges ahead of time, like noticing things in your calendar, noticing trends. So we're really excited about it. It's been an incredible mental stretch for us, and the team's been amazing, led by Emma and many others. The team's been amazing in their growth mindset and ability to think differently and break our own schemas and all this stuff. So big hats off to everyone here. But thanks everyone for being here. The HAP is officially launched. We're super excited about this modality. We'll do some writing on this. Reach out to us to have any exploratory conversations on NILES or on LEAD. Both of these things are alive and moving forward. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Shelby. I'll hand back to you, Shelby.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emma and David, for today's discussion. It was super, super insightful. Now, as we're closing, let NLI know how we can help you. We've shared our poll. That will stay up for a few moments while I share some announcements. We are getting summit planning underway. We're extremely excited and already working on things. So we would love to hear from you about what you're interested in taking in this year. We have a summit survey. Our team will share the link. But if you want to share your thoughts and feedback with us, we are in preparation mode. Second lead cohort is kicking off April 18th. If you're interested in joining the next group, our team will share information as well, and you can also check out our website. We've had amazing progress so far, and we're really looking forward to moving forward in this. Insider Exchange, this is specifically for our senior executives, so if you enjoy your Brain at Work Live, this is really going to be an opportunity for you. You can sit down and have roundtable discussions with our internal leaders while we develop new solutions and move forward into the future. So if that's something that interests you, check that out. And if you want to host with us, we really want to expand and build relationships in our community. So if your business or organization would like to host an event with us in the future, let us know. We'll share a link as well for that. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget, Your Brain at Work is our podcast. You can listen to episodes from the show and other outside episodes with lots of great topics. So with that, on behalf of our team, we say farewell. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you again next Friday.